One moment. Okay, I think we have English and Spanish recording happening. So let me talk about language justice and how to use interpretation in Zoom. You will need to select the interpretation feature at the bottom of your screen. It is usually indicated by the globe, but you might have to click the 3 buttons that says more so that you can see the globe if you don't see it on your screen already. Once you select that, you need to select English or Spanish. I will let you know that if you're hearing the interpretation and not the original audio, you might hear original audio first for a brief moment before the interpretation takes over. So just be patient and please select a language. If you are bilingual, please just pick whichever one and stick to it and make sure that you're speaking in the language that you pick. That would really make it easier for our interpreters. So I'm going to give just a moment here. I'd like to introduce momentarily our 2 interpreters who are Diana and Vic, who I have now lost. So give me just 1 second. Sorry, I was doing a good job to try to spotlight. Okay, Vic and Diana will be our interpreters for this evening. They will go back and forth. I will be humbly paying attention to them. And if they start flailing, that means we're speaking too fast. I will very kindly interrupt whoever is speaking and ask you to slow down. We're really excited to have a bilingual audience tonight. And thank you for your patience. Before we pass it back to you, Brittany, I would like to make sure that everyone can hear. So I'm going to ask the interpreters to select or to check in with folks and make sure that everyone can hear you.
In the English channel, perfect. I think we have people in the English channel with me. Perfect.
Okay, so I think we got thumbs up. There's a couple people that are joining, so we might have a couple interruptions as we get started, but we will go from there. And I'm going to remove spotlights and we will hand it back to you, Brittany.
Awesome. And it looks like we have a hand raised, Sarah.
Oh, yes. Thank you. You can come off mute, iPhone. Can't see you.
Hola.
Hola. ¿Escogiste tu idioma?
Did you select your language?
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hello, good afternoon.
Sí, yo ya estoy escuchando en español.
Yes, I am listening
I
in
already
Spanish.
chose
Thank you.
the language and I'm listening. Thank you.
Okay, I will pass it to you, Brittany, and I will try to troubleshoot in the chat as people go. Thank you.
No problem. Let me move our slides down. I think these are you, Rita.
That is correct. So previously we wanted to make a note about how we're pursuing language justice at IFCLA. And so part of that is with using the letter E at the end of words that usually end in O or A in order to try to make language more inclusive to all genders. It's not perfect. It's may not seem natural to many folks, including myself. But we are trying to do this in pursuit of equity and inclusion.
Rita, if I can interrupt you momentarily. Rosa, did you select your language? Rosa, ¿has podido escoger tu idioma?
Were you able to select your language, Rosa?
Okay, I think we're good. Go ahead, Rita.
Okay, thank you. And so that brings us to our community norm. Hello? Okay, So that brings us to our community norms. In this space, we'd like to foster an inclusive environment where people feel courageous enough to explore the new concepts we're going to be discussing today. To do that, we'd like to present some community agreements. Number one, that we're all teachers and learners. We agree to practice inquiry and respect lived experience. Number two, we are agreeing to listen deeply and participate actively and minimize distractions as much as we are able. This is a workshop, so on the latter half of the workshop, we will be doing some work. Thirdly, be mindful of body, spirit, and emotions. Stay hydrated, attend to your needs, do what you need to do. And then finally, share responsibility for accessibility. Speak slowly. Interpreters, please call me out on this. And without jargon. Use names with pronouns. Okay, are we all in agreement of these norms? Feel free to use your reactions or the chat.
Can I please interrupt to confirm a interpretation question? Gladys, ¿me puedes oír? Can you hear me?
Gladys, can you hear me?
You puedes escoger o tienes que escoger el idioma
You have to
en la
select
parte
the
de abajo.
language at the bottom.
Si lo has podido encontrar y estás
Were you
escuchando
able
en
to find
español.
it? And are you able to listen in Spanish?
Yo tampoco no puedo encontrar el.
I also cannot find
idioma.
the language. We found it. Entonces,
Los dos puntitos de al lado y ahí dice español.
the two dots where it says language interpretation, you can select Spanish and it's ready to go.
¿Sí puedo?
Were you able to do it?
No lo encuentro.
I can't find it.
¿Qué hiciste? ¿Así?
I will write to you. You'll see my messages, okay?
Ahí le toque. ¿Está bien? No,
That's fine.
We can go ahead and continue and I will work with interpretation on the side.
So again, like Brittany was saying, what is the purpose of this event? Well, it's to do three things tonight. Number one, to equip and prepare our base to conduct a legislative meeting on issues that they care about. This particular legislative meeting that we'll be talking about tonight is called a research meeting. Number two, we're trying to demonstrate the process of making change at the state legislative level. And in order to do that, it's figuring out who has the power to make change. As your representatives, whether you elected them or not, they are representing you and therefore should represent your interests. And then finally, we want to provide a space for everyone to try on and practice the tools and knowledge learned at today's workshop. This means ongoing training and improvement of skills for everyone, which means that you'll all be ready to take action when you need to. Okay, and so this slide is basically just going to show us how we're going to achieve that purpose. As you can see, we have a full agenda for tonight, but in a nutshell, what we'll be covering is 3/4 of the time we'll be working through explaining concepts and taking questions, and then the other fourth of the workshop will be saving some time to try on the skills that you're learning in breakout rooms. So right now, we will have a faith reflection. Reverend Molly, are you ready?
Yes.
All right, take it away.
Good evening y buenas noches. Thank you to our interpreters this evening. I am here to bring a word of faith to a training on how to speak with our elected representatives. And these days, that is an act that may seem to require a lot of faith. I will never forget the first meeting I had almost a decade ago with my then state senator, Kurt Schaefer, to advocate to him for Medicaid expansion. He was a primary force in blocking legislation to expand healthcare access. And he was also a member of a local Christian church in the community we shared. In our meeting, the senator started to go on about how he was worried people would take advantage of free healthcare access. And he told us that he was working with his colleagues on a set of work requirements to make sure people receiving healthcare would be deserving. I asked him simply, Senator, I know you to be a Christian, and I know Jesus to be a healer. Jesus did not stop to ask whether people deserved his healing or whether they had a job, did he? In fact, did not Jesus explain his healing was for the undeserving? And does not your faith call you to follow him? Senator Schaefer looked at me with a smirk. That's a good line, he replied. You should use that. I am using it on you, I told him, and it's not a line, it's the Bible. The senator changed the subject. And my intention was not to impose my faith upon my legislator, but to call him back to his own, to invite him back to his moral center, and to remind him of a shared power that is more beautiful than the scrabbling greed and money around him in Jefferson City. These days, the government by and for the people is far away from the people and from the compassion-centered moral values that the religious traditions of the world share across their varied and real difference. Human systems and people are so vulnerable to the seduction of power and money, and this truth is evident in our state house. The role then for people of faith and people of no faith who carry their moral center when we enter these halls of power is to speak compassion, to call leaders back to the resilience and strength of their own faith or moral center. Because while we are in the halls of the people, the actors of systems of power and oppression are also in those halls. And they are telling a story of scarcity and control, fear and suspicion of the other. That's sometimes a simpler story to hold, even as it is a deadly one. Our job as people of faith, entering the people's house, our house, the state house, is to be a shining witness to the abundant love that frees, through whatever stories we carry from our traditions and our lives. Our role is to carry the joy and resonance of a more beautiful, bigger story into the people's house. For it is our house, and the legislators are there as guests of the people to serve our collective interest. In my own tradition of Unitarian Universalism, we believe in the power of love to convert. We believe that people can change and grow, and that is a belief I carry with me into the fight for freedom and thriving of our people against all who would deny it. I believe our legislators can do better, that they can be part of writing a more beautiful story for our communities, and that we force them to be better when we show them the power of our coalitions. We can speak that possibility and that beautiful story and the power of collectives joined together into every encounter with our legislators. And so I invite you to center yourselves as you prepare for those conversations, in the powerful moral core of your own faith, whatever that may be. Perhaps think of a beautiful story that gives you courage, or a scripture. Think of the vision of your faith or your community that calls you into the wholeness of love and compassion. That is what you are there to speak to your representatives in your house. They will figure out the details and make the negotiations and take the votes, although they would love to distract you with those things. We will not be distracted. We are there to tell a better story, to bear witness to the bigger picture, and to speak to the compassion and liberation that are more whole than those stories of fear and control. And that's not just a good line. It's the heart of our faiths. So may all that is holy and sacred be with you in this training and go with you into those rooms and meetings. And may the power of love convert every hardened heart. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you, Reverend. That was great. I needed to just take a really deep breath, so I invite everyone to also take a really deep breath. So right now, we're discussing how the public gets involved with the legislative process. And if you join us for IFCLA's training with Missouri Jobs with Justice in January, you probably have already heard this, but let's recap for those who need one. Brittany, do you mind if we pause the slideshow for a second? Thank you. So just to see everyone's faces, quick show of hands. How many of you have signed a petition? Great, hands down. How many of you have ever written or spoken to your representative about a bill or an idea for a bill? Awesome. Okay, hands down. How many of you have ever given testimony in front of a committee? Okay. And then finally, how many of you have ever attended a legislative meeting or a research meeting? Okay, we're seeing some hands go up. Awesome. Okay, hands down. Brittany, feel free to put the slideshow back up. So the reason why I even asked the question was because, you know, we're all teachers and learners. You know that you've already participated in some of these things. You can, number one, participate in signing a petition by signing or circulating a petition, which is a collection of signatures on an issue to move your representatives to act. You can lobby. Direct lobbying is defined as communication, phone calls, emails, letters that express a view on specific legislation that's directed toward a legislator. And there's a difference between educating a lawmaker on an issue and telling them what they should be doing about a specific bill. And then finally, what this training is about, legislative meetings or research meetings. These are group meetings with your legislator to understand their perspective on an issue and voice your opinion. And so with that, I'll pass it off to Brittany to talk more about what a research meeting is.
Thanks, Rita. So the first thing that we want to talk about tonight, before we try on research meetings, spending a little time talking about what they are. So in short, a research meeting is the way that we, the people, can test our power with our elected officials. And it's also the way that we can gauge where our officials are around the issues that we care about. During these meetings, we can develop relationships around an agenda with an elected official. And then we also do some investigating, right? We talk about why the problem exists, what can be done about a problem, and who has the decision-making problem or the decision-making responsibility to resolve the problem. And anytime that we do research, it always sets us up for some kind of action. So like I said earlier, research meetings help us build power, right? And I think that we need a shared definition around power as we go into our night. So if you have been in organizing spaces for a long time, you've probably heard that power is organized people plus organized money. If you are a dictionary nerd like me, you might know power is the ability to act or produce an effect. But the way that I've come to understand power in my organizing and building with my folks here in Colombia is that power is the currency that allows us to change the conditions of our people. The power that we have has an expiration date on it, right? You either use it or you lose it. So we have to think and be very, very strategic about where we put our energy and where we put our power and how we use it in order to make sure that the work that we want to see done in the world actually gets done. A little bit about how research meetings help us build power. A couple things. One, it helps show our power to a decision maker. So the fact that we can come into a meeting with more than one person talking about an issue shows something to someone on the other side of the table or the other side of the Zoom call. Two, it's the way that we root ourselves in an issue in our agenda, right? A lot of us here are people of faith, and we think that our faith has something to say about the way that laws and policies get made. And so research meetings is a way to communicate that to folks. Another way that our research meetings show power is that it allows us to figure out what our lawmakers' self-interest is, right? What is it that they show up for? What is it that is going to move them on an issue? And just, what is it that has called them to be in the position that they're in? And then lastly, it helps us understand someone's position on an issue so we know how to engage them around an issue.
Brittany, can I interrupt you momentarily, please?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure that everyone has access to interpretation. Todos tienen acceso a la interpretación. If you're hearing me and you don't have access, let me know.
Buenas tardes, fíjese que del
Yo
mío
no, también en
Roxana.
el mío no puedo.
Okay, les voy a escribir en WhatsApp, okay?
Ok, sí está bien.
Gracias, gracias.
Gracias.
Go ahead, Brittany.
I was actually going to turn it back over to Rita.
Thank you, Sarah, for your attention to accessibility, and thank you, Brittany, for the pass. So you have to do your research before you go into a research meeting. And so what does that mean? So number one, we have to consider, with whom does the legislator have key relationships? Who do they trust? To whom is the target legislator accountable to? Thinking about this helps us identify easier ways to access the people with power, who we think have power, who can help solve the problem that we are looking to address. Number two, what power? Remember, power is organized people and organized money. What power do you think the legislator has to make the change that you're seeking? What are the target legislators' self-interest? What motivates them to act or to behave? Consider turning these questions onto yourself as well. Is your group or organization a key relationship to the target legislator that you're trying to contact? What is your group's ability to influence the legislator? How can you increase your group's ability to influence decisions? When we're talking about power, what power do you or your organization have to influence change? Can you move people to vote, to donate, to protest, to gather signatures, to boycott? Note that you do not have to be a US citizen to be part of making change. And that's something that I hope you will take away from this training, that participating in advocacy and organizing does not mean that you have to be a citizen of the US. And then finally, consider your own self-interest. What is the vision that you are trying to see for yourself and your community? Do you have any common values or interests with your legislator? Consider those things. And so here's where we move into the part of the presentation where we're talking about what a research meeting looks like. You've already done your research, great job. Now we're going to move into the meeting. So the roles that we have here are first, the group leader who facilitates the conversation, keeps an eye on the time, makes sure that the group's asks are clearly presented. The group leader will also follow up with the office of the legislator after the meeting. We have the note taker. The note taker takes notes of the meeting, flags moments where additional information is needed to follow up afterwards, including stories, reports, contact information, and other identified items. And then you will have section leads. Depending on the kind of meeting that you would like to have, the kind of research meeting that you would like to have, section leads could talk about personal stories or testimonies that they would like to share about their own lived experience. They could also talk about issue-specific talking points. And then also, this is a research meeting, so we need to ask some questions. What are the questions specific to the issue that you're trying to learn more about that you'd like to ask the legislator? Okay, and so Brittany, could you walk us through what a sample research meeting could look like?
Yeah. So here is a rough outline of what your meeting could potentially look like when you have done your research and you have some time set up. One, you can open with some kind of grounding similar to what we did tonight, a welcome and an introduction of your people. One of the things that we have to our advantage as people of faith is that we can bring that into the room with us. And there are times where we want to bring and emphasize that part of our work into the room with us. Next, you want to be clear with whoever it is that you're meeting with about why you're in the space, right? What is the thing that has caused you to reach out and to schedule this meeting? And then you also want to credential yourself. It's not enough to just be in the room, but folks have to know who you are and what you do. Going back to our conversation around power, what is the power that you've built and how have you used that to then be in the room with your elected officials or local leaders? Next, you can have a testimonial or two. So who are the folks that are directly impacted by the issues that you're talking about? And what is the space that you create in your meeting for them to share part of their story and their self-interest and talk a little bit about why they're in the room and why the issue is important to them. Next, if you have talking points, let's say you're meeting with a legislator around a specific bill or issue, you'll want to make sure that you communicate those talking points to the elected official or their staff. And then next is next steps. We never want to leave a meeting without knowing when's the next time we're going to talk to someone, right? Or if there are things that folks have said that they're going to do in a meeting, we just want to follow up and make sure that everyone's on the same page and have a time where we can check in. And then lastly, thank the folks that you're meeting with for giving you some time, and then wrap your meeting.
Do we have any questions so far? It seems like we have gone through the material quite quickly. So we just wanted to pause and ask for some questions.
I've seen a couple people ask in the chat about the slides, and we'll make sure that everyone gets them after the meeting. I don't see any questions, Rita. I think we might be ready to move on to our role play.
Okay, so if you have attended the previous Advocacy 101 training, you are probably an expert on this bill. And we understand that this particular slide is in English, but in the follow-up email, we will have all of the slides translated, as well as both recordings in English and in Spanish for you to watch in case you had any difficulty accessing tonight's workshop. But this is the bill that we're going to be talking about in our research meetings tonight. So it's SB 7000, Keep Missouri Minty. Keep Missouri Minty was introduced by Senator Bob Onder from District 2 of Missouri. The premise of this bill is that mint chocolate chip ice cream should only be for Missouri residents. At the point of sale, when you go and purchase the ice cream, the purchaser must show proof of residency in order to purchase it. And for out-of-state residents, there is a $3 tax added per scoop of mint chocolate chip ice cream. And if you are unable to prove residency, or you are an international resident or otherwise foreign-born, the purchase or possession of mint chocolate chip ice cream is punishable as a Class D felony. So if we're understanding correctly, Senator Onder really wants to keep mint chocolate chip ice cream in the bellies of Missouri residents. And yes, I would like to also add that this is a fake bill. This bill is not currently in session. However, we believe that adding, a bit of levity, a bit of humor to tonight's exercise is always a fun way to help us practice our skills. So, Brittany, do we have any questions that you would like to address at this point?
I'm not seeing any in the chat. David asked about is research meetings the same as a legislative meeting? And a research meeting can be a legislative meeting, but there's also times where you might be meeting with folks in the community who have a certain orientation or position as it relates to power, where you might find what we talk about tonight applicable to. But for the interest of tonight's training, we're talking about it in the context of legislative meeting. And then Annabelle, your question about what comes after talking points, I'll shoot you a message for that here in a second before we break out into groups. Pam asks, if the ice cream is only for Missouri residents, how can there be a $3 surcharge for out-of-state residents? I'll let you handle that one, Rita.
For sure. So the intention is to keep the mint chocolate chip ice cream for Missouri residents. But let's say you're from Indiana, like perhaps some of our colleagues on the IFCLA team. And so you pull up with your Indiana driver's license and you say, I would like some mint chocolate chip ice cream. And then you see that in their hand. And so you say, okay, sure. but you have to pay $3 extra in order to get that. Sarah, do you think that's an accurate explanation of this very, very fake, not real bill?
Yeah, I think the idea behind it is that Missouri legislature wants to limit access to mint ice cream to Missouri residents. But the Missouri legislature also sees that Missouri could profit if we charged out-of-state residents, but still gave them access to it. And so I think part of what you're identifying, Pam, is another layer of injustice, because we're willing to charge out-of-state residents to, if they pay, then they could have access, but in-state residents who can't prove Missouri residency still don't have access. So I think that's part of the idea. So keep those questions going.
Thank you, thank you. Are there any other questions at this time? Okay, hearing none, why don't we explain what we're going to do for our workshop tonight? The working part of our workshop. So far you've heard us talk about research meetings, and now we're going to participate in breakout groups. So if you are not interested in participating in the breakout groups, this would be the time to say goodnight. However,
but don't leave. This is the best part.
I very much agree with that sentiment, Sarah. So in the breakout groups, what we'll be doing is appointing roles. So you will have one person who will serve as your legislator. We will have one person who will be the group leader, one person who will be the note taker, and as many section leaders as needed. And so for the individuals who are not the legislator, they will be, you are welcome to ask your legislator friend in your group questions to understand their values, their self-interest, any key relationships they might have, and perhaps arriving at the question of how you think they might have the power to change something. So in some respects, you might be able to do your research before the research meeting, ideally. However, we understand at this time, you probably don't have a lot of time to do that research. So we will give you the time and space to take part of the time in breakout groups to do that preliminary research about your legislator. And then after that period, you will role play and present some thoughts and opinions on the specific piece of legislation that we have described here today. Because remember, in our research meeting, we are trying to understand more about how the legislator feels about a certain piece of legislation and the power that we think that they have to make a change. So we are, through this exercise, are trying to test and evaluate our research and get more information from this person so that we can take that back to our team in order to plan our next move. Are we going to take action in some way? What do we need to do? We need to answer the question of getting more information from our target first. Brittany, would you add anything else that would be helpful?
No, I think you just about covered it.
Yo creo que ya,
Is that at the end of the day with a research meeting, we want to come out of the meeting a lot smarter than we were before we entered the meeting, right? So be very inquisitive and ask good questions that are going to help you have a little more information than you did before.
Great. And I see, Brittany, that you've added the details for Keep Missouri Minty in the chat. And for everyone who is more comfortable speaking Spanish, we will also have a copy of this bill available in Spanish as well. So please hang tight. Do we have any questions before we enter the breakout rooms? Okay, hearing none. If your primary language is Spanish, if you feel more comfortable speaking Spanish, we're going to ask you to remain in the main room. We will send people into breakout rooms. And if you receive an invitation to join a breakout room and your primary language is Spanish, we ask that you decline that invitation and that you stay in the main room. Okay, so please bear with us one moment while we get those set up.
Traveled around all the rooms. We got a lot of Oscar contenders on the call. I heard some really, really good acting and really good role playing. So clap it up for yourselves, guys. Good job trying on something new. Before we close, I just want to get a little feedback from everybody. So how did trying on the role play go? Where was a time that you felt most confident in the role play? And what was a time that felt a little challenging or maybe you got a little stuck? And we'll just let people come off mic here and share their thoughts.
I guess I'll go first.
Go for it,
Ooh.
Dr. Gerald.
Okay. It was a little challenging in the beginning just because we're in a room and you really don't know who you're in the room with. But once we kind of designated the roles and started having dialogue, things got to moving real smoothly, which was fun. I enjoyed debating with my constituents, and since I was the role of the senator, it was just fun to interact. It seemed like we were breaking ice, really kind of getting to know each other more so than defending minty chocolate chip ice cream in Missouri. But once we kind of got into our roles, things went smoothly, and we had fun. I enjoyed it.
I'm hearing some good relationship building in Dr. Gerald's group. Who else wants to share? How was your experience? David, I see your hand raised.
Philip did a great job of being our legislator, and it was frustrating, but we found some common ground. We both had dogs that liked treats made of chocolate mint. And it was frustrating because every time we came up with an argument, he came up with a reason why we should do it his way. And it's like he had a practice tape in his head that would play every time he had an argument why we shouldn't. He said, well, how about if we make it $2? Or anyway, I imagine there'll be some frustration in the real world because they have their talking points and they stick to them.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. Not every meeting we have, when we have a research meeting, is going to be someone that shares our thoughts, right? So we have to be prepared and be able to adapt as conversation goes. Anyone else want to share? We have time for one or two more. All right, Rita, I don't see any more hand raises, so I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you. Brittany, would you be able to put up the slide deck one more time? Okay, thank you so much, everyone. This is actually the end of our presentation. So we just wanted to leave you with our contact information and talk about some upcoming events that Missouri Faith Voices and IFCLA are hosting. Brittany, did you want to talk about the lobby day?
Yeah, so on March 8th, Missouri Faith Voices is having our statewide lobby day. So we're going to meet in Jeff City. We're going to talk to some folks in the Capitol about Medicaid expansion, some of the bills in education, and we're going to also be talking to them about some petition defense legislation that's going through Jeff City right now. So we hope if you want to find a way to try on the things that we learned tonight, that you'll join us. And I'll put the sign up link to that in the chat.
Thank you, Brittany. My friend Angel, are you in the room tonight?
Yes, yes. I don't know if you can see me. I've been doing a million things at the same time. I just want to say to the Spanish speaking people joining us tonight, to the compas, that if you have a question, you can make it in Spanish because it will be translated into English. So don't hold back your questions thinking, hey, no one will understand my question. Make your question if you have it, and someone will translate it into English, just in case. Thank you, Rita.
Thank you, my friend. Do we have any questions at this point?
There is a question in the chat, Brittany, about lobby day. Will transportation be available?
Yep. So once we have a number or how many people we have coming from across the state, we're gonna figure out some carpooling.
Wonderful, thank you.
Do you want me to jump to that one, Rita?
Sarah, yeah, I was gonna ask you
Yeah.
for Maddie's question.
Absolutely. We do have a pro se asylum clinic scheduled at IFCLA on March 12th. So people who want to seek asylum who haven't found an attorney can get referred to that list. So they can't come to IFCLA first. We work with local attorneys. So if you do an intake with a local immigration attorney, if they can't take your case, they might refer you to this list for the pro se asylum clinic. And that's where we help people fill out their applications for asylum to represent themselves in immigration court. So that will happen on March 12th. We always need bilingual volunteers and sometimes childcare volunteers, sometimes a couple float volunteers who maybe are monolingual, maybe to help make copies and support sort of with those kinds of tasks throughout the day. So if you are interested or need more information about the Pro Se Asylum Clinic on March 12th, you can email or text me or Angel, and we'll put our information in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. We have a question from Bielmar. Would you like to speak?
Hola, buenas noches a todos.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My question regarding the attorneys is it for them to perhaps pick up the case to representatives in the court, or is it just to fill out the paperwork for asylum?
The asylum clinic is not giving representation. So it's to help an individual fill out their own application and represent themselves in court. So if folks want to talk about the Pro Se Asylum clinics, I'm happy to stay on for 5 or 10 minutes after we close out and be more specific.
And me too, just in case.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hay una muchacha que está en el estado de Illinois y me estaba preguntando de que
There's a young woman that was asking me. Interpreter cannot hear.
Rosa, it's really bad, your signal. Will you stay on and I'll talk to you afterwards? Because we can't hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, gracias a usted.
Okay. And so the rest of our events that we have coming up, I just wanted to bring to your attention that on March 9th, IFCLA will be having a workshop, a training, Conociendo la migra porque me maltratan, where we will learn about immigration enforcement in the US and how it was structured to mistreat immigrants and enforce really punitive measures against people that oftentimes do not recognize the dignity of everyone. So join us on March 9th for that training. And then finally, on March 23rd, IFCLA will be having a community cook-off. So people will be invited to either make their own salsa and bring their salsa to the cook-off and have people judge their salsa. So it will be a salsa competition, and it'll be very fun. We will be observing COVID protocols. So stay tuned for more details. And so if we have no other questions, like Sarah and Angel said, we will leave the room open for anyone who would like to stay on for additional questions. There will be chips at the community cook-off. Great question. And we will leave an evaluation form in the chat, as well as send a follow-up email with the slides, as well as other materials and resources related to today's training. So thank you so much, everyone.
What's the location for the cook-off?
Yes,
The
Sarah,
location-
did you want to take that?
Sure. That will be published in the follow-up email. We'll share the registration form, but that will be held on the campus of St. John the Baptist Church in South City. So like Delore and Gravois in St. Louis.
Okay. Thank you.
Basman, what is the question about the potluck?
That sounds like lots of salsa and chips.
Yeah.
But potluck, you know, I'm from communities that do potluck. So if you have a side dish or accompaniment, you know, it's easy to boil or roast corn.
That's a great idea. So we have a series of community cook-offs throughout the year. So we'll have one that's about salsa, one that's about side dishes, one that's about like main courses, one that's about desserts. And at the end of the year, we'll be able to develop a community cookbook as part of our 40th anniversary celebration. So they're supposed to be like shorter kind of events, and I'm sure we'll end up bringing additional food throughout the year. So great,
Yeah.
great thoughts.
Will we have Missouri minty ice cream though?
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.
Gracias.
Thank you.